So good evening. I have to answer the most important question of the night before we start. The answer is no. What's the question? Am I the lucky guy of this lady? No, I'm not. Unfortunately. Okay. So I hope that answers all your questions. Okay. Also, it was interesting that my boss, Tep is my boss, and you're wondering why he's just 16 years in the industry and I'm almost 20. So I was his teacher in college, and he's now my boss. So, which is of course good, because during the time I was teaching, I tell my students that you should be better than your teacher, right? Because if you're not better than your teacher, what will happen to the next generation? So obviously you guys will be much, much better when you go starting developing on Windows 8 than me, of course. Okay, so just a short introduction. Last year, sorry because of the bright light, can show of hands, how many here were last year when I gave a talk on Windows 8? Windows 8? No one? I was thinking that a lot of people won't come tonight because I already gave a talk on Windows 8 last time. So when I prepared for this, I made sure that's quite different from last time. So last year, when I gave a talk on Windows 8, we went through the happy story about it's very easy to program on Windows 8, you could reuse your XAML, etc., etc. So after that, okay, probably a few months back, we formed a small team. We just called it Innovation Team. We tried out building Windows 8 applications. Okay, part of it was influenced by our global team, who created all those Windows 8 apps, and probably show a couple of those apps later on. Okay, they were showed by Tep. Okay, so what we did was we really tried out what Windows 8 is, the development is. Okay, and tonight we'll share you not all the good things that you'll encounter in Windows 8. We'll give you a pragmatic advice on when you're developing Windows 8, what probably things that you'll encounter. Okay, so some of the apps that I'll show are not the perfect apps, obviously, because these are our learnings, and we'll just give you insights on things that needs to be improved. Okay, so I hope this is more pragmatic than the typical Microsoft seminars wherein everything is easy. You could do everything in one click, right? And you could have somebody do the click for you. No? Okay. So our topic for today, for tonight. Okay, we'll talk about what makes a good app. Okay. Developer notes, some things you need to understand, you need to know when you're developing applications for Windows 8. And of course, looking at developing for multiple platforms. Okay? Okay. So what makes a good app? It should be nice. Okay. So it's very difficult to talk about a nice app, right? Until you have your tablet with you. Okay? So this is something I realized when I tried using a tablet. So after a while, I realized that, I can't live without a tablet anymore. So I have a tendency when I see a Windows 8 on a laptop, I would like to touch the screen, even though it's not a touch screen. Okay? You become more picky on the applications. You become a gourmet of applications. Okay? So essentially, there are some concrete things or things I could not just describe what is nice, but we'll try to go through them later on. No? Nice, you'll feel it. Okay? And simple and focused. Okay, it's very simple and focused. Typical to a Metro style app. And in fact, I love creating slides this time around because I, as a non-artistic guy, get to create an artistic presentation because of the simplicity of Windows 8. Okay? And of course, fast and fluid. Okay? You always hear fast and fluid in the Microsoft events, right, seminar, and I could not tell you how important that is. It's very, very important, especially if you use the tablet. Okay? Let's look at clean, nice. It should be clean, interesting content, and looks good. Okay. So Okay, let me change my device settings. Duplicate. Okay. Oops. Okay. Um, this is the start screen, so most likely you have seen the start screen. Okay. First thing I like to do when I got this tablet was I was amazed by how things were very, very fast and fluid. Okay, and it's nice. As I move the screen, it looks good. Diba? Now you start to identify what is nice for you. Okay, so let's start with the weather. If I can find the weather tonight. Okay. So a typical application in Windows 8 is sort of simple. It's nice because the background looks nice for me. Okay, so one of the very important things that you consider when you're creating applications to get a good background and get a good artist to draw that background. Okay, especially if your content is not is quite what do you call this? Has an associated graphic, for example. Okay, all the stuff. Okay, so when you created an app called Usage Stats, so we purposely left the icon as X just to show you that we created this app. Okay, when this was first created, I didn't have a nice screen. So one thing that I asked first was to come up with a nice screen. But my team only had developers. Okay? You could do so much only when you have developers. A UX person is very, very important when you have a Windows 8 application. Okay? Imagine this with a black background. It's nothing, right? But with this background, I get to start with something. Okay? Then this is a typical application that will just show you stats. Right? It gives me an idea what a graph of some data. Okay, so typical application, some data. Okay. It looks simple, right? And it looks nice because of the way we use colors, and the content is the star of the show. Okay. Okay, this is Office 2013 and new to this. So slideshow from beginning. Okay, that works. Okay, sorry. So clean, interesting content looks good. Okay, next. I'll show you another app. I don't know my own device, right? It's actually difficult if the first time you connect a projector to your device. Okay, so devices, second screen, duplicate. Okay. So one thing we tried is, if you saw the presentation a while ago, right? The presentation a while ago, it was just sort of a fake, right? It's a fake application that looks like Windows 8. Okay, so that was one of the easiest app that we wanted to try because it looks nice, clean, and etc. So we just created this app by using a basic project template that you use in creating Windows 8 apps in Visual Studio. Okay, that's the first step. Okay, to make your life simple, start off with something or it's already there in Visual Studio. These are your project templates. Then start tweaking it. Okay, so with a short tweaking in a few days, I think it took more effort to find the content rather than building this application. Okay, and yet, if I play this, if I go through this, it looks very similar to the app or the presentation that we saw. I could play a video, right? I have content. This is actually our presentation for innovation in last 2012. I could show pictures. I could play around with it. It looks nice, simple. Okay? The content itself is the star of the show. Right? You don't have to come up with complicated applications. Okay? And most of the applications that probably start with is, I wouldn't say eye candy. It's more like content-based applications. Okay, next. We move back here. I'll master this then. Okay. Next. Okay, let's forget about running it in via slideshow. I'll just run through here. Okay, consistent design work within the ecosystem and native experience. Okay, how many here develop complex applications? Diba? How many here would like to create an application that will do everything? Diba? And earn all the money in the world? Right? It doesn't work that way, right? You might want to earn all the money in the world, but you cannot create the application that everybody will just use, right? Let's talk about SAP or even the mainframe, so it doesn't work. Okay, but our tendency is, when we were working with our own desktop applications, what did we do? We tried to do everything, right? So our application could send emails, send SMS, send to Twitter, connect to Facebook, right? Pay for your bills, right? Call home, even order food for you, right? And these are the typical applications that we're creating, right? Because we probably want to come up with a package applications that will kill all the package applications, right? But in the Windows 8 world, what we realized was, it doesn't work that way. Okay? People should see you as a distinct app doing a single thing. Okay? And because, why? Because there are certain things that our people are used to using, right? For example, if they want to send mail, what will they use? The mail application, right? If they want to send SMS, they'll use that thing. Like they want to use the camera, they use the camera applications, right? So since Windows 8 provides an ecosystem where these applications can talk to each other and integrate to each other, you should leverage that. Okay? So for example, you have an application that needs to share something via email or Twitter. Okay? Don't create an email application that's connected to your app. Leverage whatever email application that the user is using. Okay? That limits the learning curve that they have with your application, because for the things that you want to do, they're already familiar with. Okay? So one of our earliest applications was a video catalog. Okay, so this is a sort of a catalog of Microsoft videos that we want to showcase, or innovation videos that we want to showcase, and also Avanade or Accenture videos. Okay, and of course you could watch the video. Okay, probably want to share this information, right? And probably the best way to share this information is what? To share it via mail. Okay? So I don't have to create a totally different email screen just to do this. So if you have a Twitter app that could accept this information, it will just appear there. Okay? So what if I would like to search? Okay. I could actually search within the app. So working within the ecosystem is making the look and feel of your application exactly the same as other applications. So search, for example, is something that's going to be common to all. Okay? Another thing will be settings. Okay? So making sure it works with your existing ecosystem of Windows 8 makes your application easier to learn. Right? Because people will be used to searching, right? Sharing, and even changing the settings. Okay? So that's very important. Fast and fluid. Okay. The first thing you'll probably do when you're bored and you have Windows 8 will be doing something like this. Okay. You play with the start screen. Okay. So because there's physics, right? May physics dito. So you could swipe, then suddenly stop that. No? You could swipe, then suddenly stop the movement, right? And before you know it, when you're bored, you keep on doing that. Okay. So you'd expect, okay, everything flows nicely. So expect all the application flows nicely also. Okay. So you'll notice that one issue that we have when we created this was the amount of data that we need to load. Okay. So this is something we still need to work on. Notice the delay of that data. Okay. You'll see that choppy movement. This is obviously a turn off to your users, right? I'll show you later on probably how to deal with this using async. I'll show you that later. But obviously, when you're used to fast and fluid applications, if your application stand out as being choppy, you could easily say goodbye. So performance is very, very important when you're creating applications on Windows 8. Okay? And as a developer, you should be able to understand on how you should leverage all these features by the language to make your applications fast and fluid. Okay? So Microsoft has gone to great extent to make this available, at least this programming style readily available to you guys to use. Okay? But it takes a bit of an effort to understand and get used to it, but it's actually easy. Okay? I'll show you that later on. No? Okay? Okay, let's now go to the chismis portion. Okay, the chismis portion. Why the chismis portion? We'll tell you the things that, the bugs of our applications and what we tend to do about it. Okay? The pain points that we had when creating these applications. Okay, so this is very important. Okay? So I think Microsoft is not here. So they'll not kill me for this, but this is actually good. This is actually something you should appreciate or at least consider when building applications. Number one, get a UX person. Okay, so don't think that the Metro style apps, di ba? Kasi yabang ko dito no? Kala ko ang galing-galing ko no? Magaling ko gumawa ng design, no? Nag-box-box lang ako dito, tapos pantay yung box. Uy, I'm a very good artist, no? Okay. At least I can get away with it with the PowerPoint, but with a real app, it's a different story. So it's very, very important to get a UX person who could look at your app, come up with a seamless design with your data. Okay? And this artist should not be the artist who wants to be the star of the show. You should be able to make your content the star of the show. Okay? You should be able to supplement the content, which is obviously the star of the show. Okay? So get a UX person. That's very important. So we got a UX person to spruce up a little bit the usage stats app that you saw a while ago. That background thing filled the void that we had when you look at the application. Next would be multiple screen resolutions. Okay. So this is one of the most painful things that you need to deal with. Okay. Multiple resolutions, especially if you're sensitive to the resolution of the screen. Okay? So, this app, for example, it looks nice, right? On this resolution. It looks nice on this resolution. But when we ported this to a large screen, right? Large screen. It didn't work out well because when we designed this, we made it a point that we follow a certain convention, or we create a settings wherein, okay, these 3 squares are on top, then these 3 squares on the second row should be there, right? But given the way this UI is laid out, once you have a taller screen, that's 3 by 3, that thing becomes 2 columns with 3 rows. Okay? So that kind of set things, that came out bad, especially when we had a visitor and we want to show this off. And that was the first time we deployed it in a large touchscreen, right? So what did we do? Okay. Obviously, the best way to do it is when you create this using XAML, you make sure you don't hard code as much as possible, sizes, use the horizontal alignment, etc., etc. But in this case, okay, one approach that we did was to, okay, if your application cannot be that intelligent, leverage an intelligent person who will change the size for you. No? So you go to settings, and we had preferences, and we had an option to change the scale. Okay, so we just use the intelligence of the person instead of the app. No, so I could change the scale here. Okay, to whatever I want. Okay, so it's not working here because I'm not running on a large screen. Okay. Another application that we had issues with, similar to that, was this. I'll show this application again later on for another purpose. Just give a short background. It's actually running already. Yo. Darn it. I need to run this first in my main screen. Okay. By the way, as an advice to developers, okay, you still need a mouse when you're using Visual Studio on a tablet. Okay. But then if you're using your finger, you become very, very accurate with your finger kung fu. Okay. Okay. But to be fair, this Windows 8 on the desktop is much, much better than Windows 7. Okay. So let me run this first on my local machine. Just to show you the other problem that we have. Actually, I discovered this problem just tonight. No? Okay. So this also had a resolution problem when we deployed it in our large touchscreen, but we had time to fix it. So this works for large screens and a good size tablet. But when I plug this in tonight on a 1024 by 768 resolution, this happened. Okay? So this happened. Okay? So we fixed it for the big screen, but I didn't realize that we had projectors still that's running 1024 by 768. Okay. But just to be fair, okay, so when this came out, when we deployed it on the large screen, the guy who created this was very good. It's very, very good. Told me, Barn, how are we going to debug this? This large screen is attached to the ceiling, and do you expect me to develop against that large screen with my neck? Or with me looking up there, and instead of having a stiff neck, I have an arched neck or something. Okay, so and besides, if you're a small ISV, you can't invest on a large screen, a small screen, medium screen, right? Smoke screen, mosquito screen, okay, all those stuff. Okay, so the advice I could give is use a simulator. Okay? Practicing my finger kung fu. Okay? Simulator, and run this on the simulator. Okay? So, how come this works? Because in your simulator, you could choose specific resolutions. Okay? So, when we found out it doesn't work on a 27-inch screen, for example, it didn't work. So, he developed against this 27-inch settings. Okay? Of course, we missed out, obviously, this setting. The 1024 by 768 setting, we failed to check on that. Okay? So it's bad, but if I go, let's say, 12-inch, is that 12-inch? No. Oh, let's see, 1366. Yeah, that looks just right. Okay? So resolution is very, very important. Use a simulator. Simulator is your best friend so that you won't have to invest on different screens. Okay? Next, there are so many missing features. Okay? I just say so many, no? I'm not really saying, it's not really that many. So many in the sense that there was a point wherein we just want to display a message box. Okay? What's the API to open a message box? Di ba, message box? Duh. So, message box. So, sabi ko na, message box. So, message box. IntelliSense. I think Visual Studio is stupid. There's no message box. How come? Okay, probably wrong. I didn't reference the thing. It's not there, right? So what do? If Visual Studio fails, what do? You Google Bing, right? You Google Bing, right? Parang Google, like pabili ng Colgate, yung close up, di ba? So you Google Bing, no? So you open up Bing and Google Bing, and you realize that there's no message box in Windows 8. Apparently there is, but it's not the message box thing, right? Okay? So there are certain things that will make you okay. I think there, in that respect there's a logical reason behind it, because the message box that Windows 8 has is an asynchronous version. So a message box call is actually a synchronous version, so they created an asynchronous version. And the philosophy behind a lot of the APIs of Windows 8 is it will not give you a synchronous version if there's an asynchronous version, right? Why? Because if there's a synchronous version, we will choose the synchronous version, right? Because we are all lazy, right? That's why we have IntelliSense, right? Autocomplete, all those stuff, you know? Which is good, of course, because we develop a lot of applications based on because we're lazy, okay? So that's something that's gonna, well, it's a gotcha. And another thing is, my favorite demo when I use Blend, you know Blend, right? So Blend is the tool that we use in Silverlight to create animations or whatnot, yung artistic thing. I love doing animation demos using Blend, right? I will demo a ball that will bounce, okay? And usually, I'll use radial gradient, di ba? Radial gradient, pabilog yung gradient, right? Okay. So when I was demoing, I was so confident, right? I've done it so many times in Silverlight. And Windows 8 development, if you know Silverlight, you also know Windows 8 development, it's XAML, right? It's Blend. It looks exactly the same. So I drew a circle, fill. There's no radial, there's gradient, but there's no radial gradient. Is this RTM? Yes, it's RTM. So there's no radial gradient. Okay? Yeah. So in short, don't be overconfident. No. There are small things that you expect, okay? And don't let that frustrate you, because this is just V1, okay? And you could depend on, obviously, third parties to help you out, okay? And example was we use a third-party. It's a free third-party library that shows the flyout. Di ba yung kanina yung settings? Okay? Sad to say, the HTML5 CSS3 version has a flyout, but in XAML, there's none, so you have to depend on third-party libraries. So make sure you leverage third-party libraries to ease some of your frustrations from the small things that are not available. Okay. By the way, pansin nyo color-coded, no, to? Di ba? Nice, simple, focus yan. Just wanted to point that out because I spent some time to think about how to present that. No? Kasi sayang naman kung hindi ko sasabihin nyo tapos hindi nyo nakakita. No? Sayang effort. Okay. Okay, next. Ano yung blue tuloy? Okay, blue is simple and focused. Okay. Very easy. Use project templates. Okay. So in Visual Studio, there are lots of project templates. Okay. So let me show you that. So my finger is not working. Okay. Okay. Stop debugging first. Stop debugging. Okay. So when you say File, New Project, doing Windows Phone here, Windows Store. Okay? Utilize all these things. Okay? There are some built-in templates that you could use with a lot of code. Very, very good code, I tell you. Okay? So we all know that we're all MCPs, right? So we don't even have to copy-paste anymore. Microsoft copy-paste. Because it's already pasted. Okay? It's already there in the code, so you don't have to copy-paste from somewhere else. So if you leverage your these project templates, you're one step ahead. Okay? Microsoft pasted already. Okay? Okay? And not only that, if you add a different page, that doesn't stop there, right? So if let's say, add new item, add new item, there are not much more goodies that you could see here, okay? So in the typical projects or applications that we create in Windows, typically we just have, let's say we add one web page. What we end up with is one file, right, with basic functionality, okay? But here, what happens here is that it will insert code on different parts of your applications for you, okay? So that is now, so project template, Microsoft copy-pasted kasi it will paste that for you, okay? Pag ito, automatic pasting, no? It will insert the proper code in the existing files that you have. It will insert the proper code. And in fact, if you you started off with a very, very basic project, and you ask for a very complicated project item, it will tell you that your project is missing some files, okay? And do you want to add it? You say, obviously, yes. Format your hard disk? Yes, okay. Okay, very good, okay? So we always just say yes, no? And you won't have any problems, no? Just kidding. So make sure you leverage, don't build those things from scratch, leverage all these things. Oh, so okay, where am I? Okay, leverage contracts. So similarly, there are templates wherein it will generate those contract code for you. Okay? So, siyempre, pinagyayabang ko yung yung share, yung, di ba? Yung search. Okay? Ano yun eh? Automatically pasted and just relayed it out. Okay? And of course, async. Very important. Okay? So, if you've been programming in .NET since 1.0, sino ba nag-program ng .NET since 1.0? Oh, wag nang mag-deny. Okay, 1.0, right? You know that Microsoft had created a number of patterns, right, for asynchronous programming. right? Yung async, yung begin, invoke, etc., all those stuff. And most probably you don't know about it. That's why you always choose synchronous, di ba? Because you don't want to deal with it. Okay? But Windows 8, it is very critical that you understand async development. I'll show you a little bit of that later, but I'll combine that with a demo of sharing code between your Windows 8 and your Windows Phone. So parang isang malaking demo na lang yun. Okay? So it is very important that you understand what async is. Okay? So don't worry, it's easier than a lot of people think. Excuse me. So async is very important. Excuse me. Ano ko dun, Okay. And the most controversial question, okay? Ito discussions namin to no? How many here have Windows 8 tablets? How many here has the Windows 8 phone? Okay. How many here has an iPhone? Wala ako Tinataas ko lang para baka hindi kami. How many here has an Android phone? How many here has an iPad? Okay. So reality bites, right? So right now, we probably don't have enough Windows phones available, the market, right? But I just bought my Windows Phone 8 last weekend, okay? And surprisingly, I went through 3 stores, and I went to, let's say, 6 stores, and 3 of them have Windows 8 phones. Unlike when I bought my HD7, I had to go to Cubao Gateway to find that HD7, no? Another mall, wala akong makita isang HD7. So that's a good news. But in the interim, the reality is, there are more people has Android. There are probably also more people has iPhone, pero nahiya lang kasi baka nagyayabang sila, mahiyaman raw sila, no? Okay. Tama? Okay. So I think when you have Android para sa mga mong calls, yung mga iPhone, yung mga special calls, and yung Symbian mo, di ba, for other calls. Okay? Mabuti yun ang rason why there are more phones than toothbrush. Right? Because nung nakita ko yung kanina, there are more smartphones than toothbrushes. I want to hide my smartphone. Why? Because there's a high probability that if you have a smartphone, you have bad breath, right? So I was actually concerned with that statistics, but good thing Tep gave an explanation that probably one person have a lot of phones and you only have two toothbrushes. Okay? Or else I'll be ashamed to show off my smartphone, right? Okay, so cross-platform. Sorry, I forgot to invite our mobility platform lead. So mobility platform lead is also Avanade, but they're doing a lot of iPhone work, Android work, and now we're collaborating so that they will now have Windows Phone and Windows Phone 8 and Windows 8 work in their projects, no? I couldn't give you a lot of information, but except that we have a separate group that handles this, and there are actually a lot of technology that you could use. Okay, one is PhoneGap. PhoneGap is I think recently bought by Adobe. Okay, you create HTML5/CSS3 applications, build it once, and have it compiled in the cloud, and target it to multiple native applications like your Android, your iOS, etc. Okay? The other one, Zarmin, I look at the website, it's a bit expensive, but if you're a die-hard .NET developer like me, you'll be intrigued by this developer platform or developer tool. Okay? Use .NET to create native applications on iOS, on Android, and Windows Phone, and Windows 8. Okay? So quite interesting. Okay, but the price is also very interesting. Okay, very, very interesting. Okay, so, but if you're a Microsoft only shop, okay, if you're a Microsoft only shop, you also probably need to consider a little bit of a cross-platform type of application. Okay, what do I mean? You probably want to create an application that runs on both Windows Phone 8 and Windows 8. Okay, if you've seen the latest architecture of Windows Phone 8, right? Its OS kernel is the same as your Windows 8 OS kernel. Okay? You're now, before it was just, Microsoft was just boasting that your client OS, even the XP days, is the same as the OS, underlying kernel OS for your servers. Now, your underlying kernel is the same for your server, your desktop, your tablet, and your phone. Okay? But of course, there's a departure in the API itself, because one of the key objectives of Windows Phone 8 is to make sure your existing Windows Phone 7.5 apps, etc., would still run. Okay? But there's enough commonality to program it in a certain way so that you could create applications that could run on both. Okay? And that is my next demo. Okay. So before I go to this MVVM, portability class library, portable abstraction, shared source file things, I'll just show you the application first, how it works. No? My finger kung fu is not working. My chi is out. Okay. So this is the what do you call this? The program. Okay. Just to show you that I'm running the real thing. Okay. Let me run this through the Visual Studio. No, my finger is wrong. Okay, start without debugging. Okay, so it's a simple application. You just give a maximum value. It will determine the prime numbers from 1 to that value. Okay, so all the prime numbers between 1 and that maximum value. Okay, and I'll graph at what point it was able to compute. Okay, since the computation is very, very fast, okay, I inserted a delay of 300 milliseconds. Okay, just to give me a good graph. Okay, good graph. Okay, I'll also show you the difference between async and non-async versions of the computations. Okay. Okay, so I'll type in a number here. Let's put in 20. Okay, I'll put in 20. Okay, so ideally what will happen is when I click on the button, usual thing we do is once you start computation, you don't want another computation to happen, right? Because there's no point of computing something that's already being computed, right? So what do you usually do? You'll disable the buttons, right? So once I click on compute, you expect me to disable the button, right? Okay, so let's see. So I click on compute. Okay. Processing complete. Okay, so that's the graph. Okay. Okay. If you were looking closely, the button was not disabled because usually when a button is disabled, the text was grayed out, right? It was not grayed out. Okay. I also attempted to click on the text box and type something. Okay. Nothing happened. Okay. So the application seemed to hang on me. Okay. Now, if I did a compute async, okay, watch closely. Notice that the bottom got disabled, and if I click on the text box, I could type a lot of things, right? The keyboard reacted. Okay. Okay. So that's how important async is to us. Okay. Making your UI responsive. But even in the absence of async, notice that we didn't see the typical Windows applications like your application is not responding. Alam niyo yun, di ba? Not responding. Okay. So at least it tried to do its best to keep a decent UI. Okay. So going back, this is the Windows 8 version, right? Okay. So how about the Windows Phone version? Okay, so the Windows Phone version, set as startup project. So let me run this first on the emulator. And let me bring out my Windows Phone where I previously deployed this app. It's loading. It's loading. So this is the new Windows Phone 8 emulator. Okay. Sad thing about it is that you need Windows 8 to run this one. Okay. I don't know if sad or good, right? Because probably you have Windows 7 in your office. Okay. Now, this is actually the same application, but a different visualization. Okay. So the underlying computation is the same. The interaction is the same. I'll show you compute and compute async. You'll see the same reaction, but of course, I use a different approach in visualizing the application. Okay, because I don't have the same chart available in Windows Phone 8, I use a simple charting, roll out your own charting type of application for the Windows Phone 8 edition. Okay, so let me type in 20. Again, same thing you would expect. When I click on these buttons, I should see them disabled. But when I press compute, for example, that code that will disable it didn't run. Okay, it just happened. Okay, now compare that with the async version. Okay. Do not put a debug. Where is F9 on the keyboard? Okay, there's no F9 on your soft keyboard. Okay. Damn it. Okay. Okay. We'll repeat the demo. Okay. So notice that if I click on compute async, notice that the buttons automatically disabled, actually, right? The code for compute also had this disabling, but it never got the opportunity to run because I wasn't using async programming. The control was not somehow returned to the UI thread to manage that UI work. Okay? But even if I click on compute, nice thing about this is that at the very least, the panorama is still functioning. Okay? So at least it tried its best to react. Okay? So just to show you this is not fake, let me run the phone version. Close that. Yun. Okay. Camera. Can you see this? Where is this? Kabayang buntis. Yeah. So this is the exact same application. So when I click on compute, I can still move this. Okay. Notice nothing came out until I click OK. Yeah. Okay, so let's try compute async. So notice naka-disabled siya. I can move. Okay. Okay. So smile. No. Dapat kukunan pa pala kayo, no? Smile. Smile. Yan. Ready? Naka-video mo. Something went wrong. Okay. Naka-video mo tayo. Okay. Ayan. Isa pa. Ayan, okay. Nakasmile ba kayo? Okay, let me close this. So let me give you a short walkthrough on how this app was created. No? Do you understand MVVM? Do you know what MVVM is? Model, view, view model. Okay, for those who do not understand model, view, view model, it's a pattern for creating applications ever since WPF came out, Silverlight. Okay. One thing that I noticed, so in our team, what I did was, okay, try to develop those apps. I gave them an app idea, and I asked them to just develop it, and without telling them a lot about how to approach it. Okay. So when I look at it, because it's a prototype, they didn't use MVVM. So I attempted to create an application that will run on both Windows Phone and Windows 8. It was kind of difficult. It was kind of difficult. And so that's why I have to create this app from scratch, just to somehow identify how you're going to go about doing this. Okay? And there's of course guidance from MSDN on how to do it. Okay? MVVM is a model, it's a pattern that you use when you're building Silverlight applications, in this case Windows 8 and Windows 4 applications, where you separate the different parts. Okay? So you have basically three parts: the view model, and the model. The model is basically your data. Okay? That is in my case, the prime numbers that I was able to generate. Okay? The view model is sort of the code that controls the view. Okay? So it is a traffic cop that controls navigation on the UI screen without knowing what the UI screen is. Weird, right? So it's a view model, so it represents whatever your screen without knowing what your screen is all about. Okay? It also sort of coordinates your actions. Okay? Without knowing what the UI screen is all about. So if you're familiar with creating ASPX web forms, so I believe most of you know how to develop ASPX web forms, correct? You could imagine that your view model is the code behind. Okay? It's a code behind, but it's not directly attached to the UI. Okay? Then, of course, the view. The view is where you place all your controls, etc., etc. So what is important here is when you create applications that you expect to work on Windows Phone 8 and Windows 8, what you could do is you should be able to divide the code such that you have a view model, you have a model that could be shared between Windows 8 and Windows Phone 8. And only differentiate between the two platforms using the view. Okay? So notice that I have a different way to display the data that I have in Windows Phone and different data on Windows Phone 8. Okay? So how do you approach this? No? Okay. Of course, the easiest part is the model part. Model part must most likely be some data you have, right? Because data is obviously data. No connection to the UI yet, right? Okay? So first you create your model library. Here I have a model library. Okay? It represents a prime number, and it represents the computational code to compute for the prime numbers, right? So I have here I just call it the entity, the prime number. Come on. The prime number. Okay, it's just basically your properties, right? Okay. They're just your properties. Of course, your prime number helper. Okay. Mahirap pala mag-double click using your finger, no? Double tap. Okay, ayaw. Okay, kung ayaw, enter. Ayan, okay. Tigas ang ulo niya. Okay, double tap. Okay. So this is just basically your code. I hope you know how to determine if a number is a prime number or not, right? Okay. Of course. Right. So it's just basically code, no? Okay? Okay. Right. So do you just use a regular class library? The answer is actually no. You cannot use a regular C# class library. Okay? For the simple reason that not all APIs are available in both Windows 8 and Windows Phone 8. What you could do is you create what you call a portable library. Okay? So what Microsoft did was to identify some of the APIs that are common to all. Okay? Well, you could configure what platforms you want to target. It will intelligently hide, okay, or play stupid for those things that it's not there. Okay? So, let's say, I want a portable library. Properties. I get to choose which ones do I want to create or to share that library with. So what it will do, it will be intelligent enough to only limit the APIs that are common to all those things that you choose. Okay? Of course, the less you choose, the richer the experience will be. Okay? So I chose Windows Phone 8, Windows Store apps, and obviously .NET Framework 4.5 because that's a framework that's present in both Windows Phone and Windows 8. So what will happen is when your IDE, your editor will become less intelligent. Okay? So yung IntelliSense mo, okay? Kasi cents na yun eh. Kasi kung $, magiging IntelliSense. No? Hindi eh. So, magiging a little bit stupid siya. It won't show you a lot of things. Okay? It will just focus on the things that is workable on both ends. No? Okay? So, you will use the portable library. Okay? Gets? Okay. Now, similarly, you'll do the same thing for your view model. Okay? So you also have another class library. It's also portable class library. The reason I separate that out, okay, because that's the UI logic and the model is pure data. So I separate them out to a different assembly. So you could also combine them to a single assembly and set that up as a portable library. No? Okay. The first problem you encounter, okay, so the first problem you'll encounter is there will be some things that are not available. So you have to deal with it. Okay. So if there's such thing as you have a simpler version of that, then that's available. Use the simpler version of that. But there are things that you don't have control over right? For example, in your view model, you want to trigger your UI to show a message box, right? And in Windows Phone 8, you have a different command to create a message box. Guess what's the command for Windows Phone 8? To display a message box. Galing, no? Message box. Okay. So for Windows 8, iba. Okay? So what you do is you have to create what you call interfaces. Interfaces. Where is that? So I have to create something called. Okay? So applying the concept of solid. Does anybody know what solid is? Solid. Single responsibility. Open and close principle. List scope substitution principle. I, inversion of interface segregation. I. D is dependency inversion. Alam niyo yan? Okay. Karalan niyo yun. Tapos para pag nag-apply kayo, mataas yung salary bibigay sila. Okay? These are principles of good object orientation, right? Okay? So you just apply this. So what we did, what you should do is, if there's something, like in computer science, everything is solvable by introducing another indirection, right? So in order to solve our message box problem, by having totally different stuff, we introduce an indirection by creating an interface, right? So I now create an iMessage box service interface, and later on, right, if I program against that, I could easily replace that when I'm in the Windows Phone 8 code base. In the Windows 8 code base, I'll provide a different implementation. But on the portable library side of things, I will just program against that interface, right? Okay? Then, of course, you probably use dependency injection to put in that class. Okay? So I used allocator. Ayaw ng double click. good tip, pag ayaw ng double tap, enter. Okay. Okay. So we will probably create a factory, okay, an abstract class factory. Okay, that will be implemented. There will be a Windows 8 version of this. There's a Windows Phone 8 version of this that will override that and will give you the specific concrete implementation. So the concrete implementations of this will be coming from will come directly from your Windows 8 project and Windows Phone 8 project. Okay? Tama? So just to give you an idea, I actually extended it further. So what I did was, I created the locator. Again, this is from the view model. So the locator, I not only want the message service, I also want to create the view model directly using sort of also a factory. So I now created an abstract class that inherited from an abstract class so that I'll end up with 2 properties, okay? Because I want that to be created directly by your Windows Phone in Windows 8. So by the time I reach the actual code here, let's say Windows Phone 8, I now have my enter. Okay. And I look at my constructor. So message box service is that's the time I create my message box service, and I create my chart view model, passing to it the specific message box service. This is the phone version, and I also have a Windows 8 version. Okay? Then, of course, you use the data binding, MVVM data binding, etc. on your UI. Right? So, hirap mag-demo ng touch. Okay? So, if I open main XAML, if you understand data binding, come on, okay. Okay. I created a data source with the view model locator and the chart view model. So essentially, the view model locator is a key to the app.xaml, okay, that creates an instance of the phone model locator that I showed, or the Windows view model locator that I didn't show you, but it's exactly the same. And you'll just get the chart view model property. Okay? Everything will now data bind and it will work nicely. Of course, I won't show you the UI anymore. For the simple reason is they are different. You design it independently of each other. Okay? But the thing there is, your model will be the same code, your view model in the same code, right? For those things that are different, you create an interface against that, and you now create your locators or your factories where you're gonna put in the code that will instantiate the concrete classes. Plus, if you do that model, what could you do? The most important thing that people forget, right, when you write code is to what? To test, right? Right? Tama? So I could create an automated unit test. Oops. Okay? You could now test your model. You could now test your view model. Okay? If everything is interspersed within your UI code, with your code behind, it's very difficult to test that. Right? So if you follow the MVVM pattern, remembering the solid principles, you get to separate out your code that is easily unit testable. Things that are not unit testable will directly, like your UI code, at least they'll be minimal. Okay? You could have someone do the testing manually. Okay? The more code that's not on the UI makes it easier for you to do automated testing. Okay? And in summary, okay, so you may have lost You lost track of what is the more important thing. So when you create applications, number one, it should be nice. Okay, you will all know. Okay, it's subjective, but it should be nice. Okay, simple and focused. Don't overdo your application. Don't create applications that will do everything. Leverage whatever is there already on the application list. Leverage the existing contracts. Okay, reuse the ecosystem. Minimize the learning curve, right? Fast and fluid. Okay, if it's not fast and fluid, people won't even use your application. Okay? So, thank you. So, we can open the floor for questions that I hope I could answer.
How do you display 3D applications or game applications on Windows 8?
3D animations?
Yeah.
3D? Okay. So, with Windows 8 applications, pangit ko pala sa picture. Use DirectX. Okay, so good or bad, you could program native code in Windows 8, C++, and approach that Microsoft is suggesting use Direct3D. Okay, so you have control over the hardware. In the Windows Phone 7 scenario in the past, we use XNA. Okay, in Windows Phone 8, it still supports XNA, but this is already discouraged because especially if you're targeting Windows Phone 8 directly, because you could now program in C++ again on Windows Phone 8, and you could use DirectX. The beauty they say about using DirectX, you have better control of their graphics hardware. Okay, so you'll be able to create better games or faster games. So it's DirectX, Direct3D.
I'm just wondering, how did you get to run the application you developed from your Windows, from Visual Studio to your phone? Because I'm interested in how, for example, I have a phone and I created an app, and how can I run it?
Deploy it on your phone.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, first you need to have a developer account. Okay, once you have a developer account, there's a tool here that will allow you to unlock your phone. That doesn't give you right to start a business. Unlocking Windows Phone. Because once you unlock that phone, you connect this to your phone and you could deploy it directly. Okay, so you want me to show you that? Okay, so you run this application with your phone connected, then mine's not connected. The retry thing here would say register. Okay, so, but this won't work if then you're gonna log into your developer account, no? But if you don't have a developer account, tough luck, okay? But the good news is, if you are an MSDN subscriber, are you an MSDN subscriber?
Yeah.
So in Accenture, if you're an Avanade badged employee, you have that benefit, okay, MSDN. No? So Microsoft gave out a promo. When you have an MSDN, you have this code that you could use to register on the Windows, on the developer site. Then you get a chance to become a real phone developer because you could now deploy your apps on your phone. Okay, so if you have MSDN, you automatically or you could go directly to the site, and I think you have to just pay, I forgot, $3,000 a year, I can't remember. Okay? If you intend to earn money, that's worth it. Okay, part of it would be they will test your applications. That's why they're charging also, and you could configure such that once you upload it to the store, and you charge money, Microsoft will pay you 70% of the charge or the cost of the application. Okay, so if you're serious about creating applications and earning money from it, I think the investment is well worth it. Okay, yes, question.
Good evening. I'm just wondering how Windows 8 applications handle databases. Is it like a native or a local database, or do you use Windows Azure for handling databases?
Actually, that's a very, very good question. Windows Phone 7, they came out with Link to SQL, right? If you remember, Link to SQL to address that. But I think Microsoft realized that, again, cross-platform type of thing, a lot of mobile developers are already used to using SQLite. Okay? SQLite is actually an open source local database technology that is cross-platform. You could use SQLite on iOS, Android, okay? And SQLite right now has a version that you could deploy on your Windows Phone 8 and Windows 8. And there's also an open source project that provides a .NET wrapper around SQLite. Okay, so you could use that approach. And what you do is you use the MVVM pattern that we showed a while ago in creating an interface so that you could target properly the SQLite version for your Windows Phone 8 and SQLite version of your Windows 8 version of SQLite. Okay, so again, a lot of mobile developers saying, why create a different database? We already have a SQLite database in our iPhone. Why not just get that, you reuse that schema and everything, that technology? So I think Microsoft is sort of convinced in that approach. Okay. So any more questions?
Are biometrics included in the ecosystem that our applications can tap into?
Good question. No? I would think it's just an application. Similar to, let's say, you have laptops that have that hardware support, right? Since there's no, it's not, the requirements of the Windows 8 on the hardware is not that stringent, requiring you to have biometrics features. Okay, so I don't think there is that standard way of integrating. The old way of doing that is to hook up your application or driver such that it intercepts that as if it's going to log in for you, right? So biometrics, it will remember your log-on password. So behind the scenes, they will just remember what their username and log-on password is. Yun na lang. The best that I could see is, although not biometrics, diba, yung picture password, but that's not biometrics. But at least that's something different. Available just to that in Windows. Okay. So short answer is no, I don't think so. Okay.
Our last question.
Almost the same about IO communication with the Windows applications po.
Okay, very good question. It's something I'm very interested in. So app-to-app communication. So app-to-app communication in Windows 8 and Windows Phone, of course, starts off with the shared contracts, right? The share and search, right? It also has an app-to-app communication via URLs. Okay? For example, you have an application wherein you want to trigger a Skype call, right? So probably you have some social networking application, okay? Obviously, you don't want to build Skype features, SIP protocols on your application, right? Right? So you could use a specific URL that your phone recognizes that triggers, let's say, Skype. And if you have multiple applications that subscribes to that type of URL, okay, the user could choose which one he could run. Okay, so that's another type of communication. Another type of communication is via NFC. Okay, you know NFC? Near field communication, right? So it also exposes an API via URLs so that your phones could communicate by just tapping with it to each other, tapping those phones together. Okay? But the sad thing is, I realized that NFC is not standard. Okay, I already bought the phone and I look for NFC, it's not there. So NFC is not standard on the phone. So quite disappointing. Okay, quite disappointing. Okay, so that's the last question, right?
Yep.
Okay, so thank
Thank you very much, Warren.